Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I know folks are still connecting to audio, but we're really excited that you're here. So thank you so much. We really look forward to talking to you more about addressing challenges in engagement and screening. I know some of you are clinical wellness coordinators who have practiced this extensively with us in coaching, and we really appreciate you being here. Others may be less familiar with these processes, and we appreciate you being here as well. I'm Marina Weiss. I'm a clinical psychologist and postdoctoral fellow at the Center for Innovation in Mental Health at the CUNY Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy, and I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Letty DeLeo, also a psychologist, and our colleague Celia Le, who is going to be supporting us on the tech side. She's behind that mysterious CUNY CIMH indicator there. We're going to go ahead and get started today because we want to be respectful of everybody's time and get you out of here on time. Next slide, please. So if you don't mind, I know some of you are already doing this, but if you could please add your full name and your organization to Zoom, that would be really wonderful. You can do that by hovering your mouse over the picture of your face, and 3 dots should appear in the upper right corner. Then you'll see a menu when you click on those dots that has rename close to the bottom. And then you can add your first and last names, and also please add your organization because that will just help us give your organization credit for your attendance. If you are joining us from a phone, or if you're having trouble renaming yourself, you can just put that information in the chat and we are happy to rename you for you. I know folks are still joining and we really appreciate you taking the time to do this piece because we just want to make sure that everybody gets credit for their participation today. So we'll give everybody a moment. If you have joined us from, I see somebody's name is Vin60 ThinQ5G. If you are joining us from a device, it would be really great if you could rename yourself or let us know in the chat what your name and organization are so we can make sure you get credit. No worries. I see that. I think there's a girl on the call right now because awesome. And Angela, thanks for letting us know that Woodside America Works staff are running a little late from an event. That's really helpful to know. Folks are welcome to join, but we will just ask folks to add their name and their organization. So Miss Ruth Ann Goodridge, if you don't mind adding your organization either in your name or in the chat, that would be great. Keva, thank you so much for offering us that info. Miss Wendy Maldonado, if you have a chance to offer that either in the chat or rename yourself. And also there is somebody who's joined from a device and your name is currently the device name, I believe. So if you could change that, your name is V60 ThinQ something. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. And our team can also support renaming you if you're having any issues with that. I don't want to take up too much time. I don't want to take up too much time with this piece, but I do want to make sure that everybody gets credit. So also, if you could help me out by, if you know that colleagues of yours are joining, when they join, if you could help us out by reminding them in the chat to rename themselves and put their organization down, that would be great as well. So thank you all so much for your patience with this. I know this is the most annoying part of these calls, or at least I think it is. Maybe there are other ones that are annoying for you, but I want to make sure that we get you and your organization credit for your attendance since you are here. Thanks so much. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward. Today, we're going to be talking about a bunch of different stuff. Letty and I will be talking about first offering you an icebreaker, then thinking about consumer engagement. And then we'll, with a PHQ-9, and we'll talk about using the PHQ-9 in a bit more detail. And then we'll have a break. And then we'll have a discussion about how we plan for screening and think about screening. And we'll end with our guided visualization, which I hope will be a relaxing meditation for us. Before we get started, yes, thanks, Josh. We are muting folks, so we appreciate that. And thank you to everybody who's putting your name in the chat. We can help renaming you during this time. I know that sometimes Zoom is a little tricky. So without further ado, I'd love to get us started with our icebreaker. Thanks so much to everybody for being here. So we'd like to ask you to share your name and role and organization and something that you're looking forward to, and then choose who will go next. So I can go ahead and say, I am looking forward to making dinner with a friend tomorrow night. And again, my name is Marina, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm with CIMH. And I will pass it to Patrice.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Patrice Sloan. I'm a career development specialist here at Jobs Plus Bed-Stuy location. And I am just grateful for the life my mother gave me when she gave it to me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. I know that the slide is a little confusing because it says gratitude at the bottom, but we are asking folks to share something you're looking forward to. Sorry about that. We could work on that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Your fault.
It says grateful, so I'm just grateful. I'm
reasonable to answer either of the questions. Do you want to choose who would go next?
On my screen, it says Iris.
Great. Thank you, Patrice.
Hi, everyone. My name is Iris Alus, and I am the director for Eastside House Jobs Plus. And I am looking forward to pumpkin everything and anything in the fall.
Wonderful. Thank you, Iris. And would you like to choose who will go next?
Sure. What about Cheryl? Cheryl Ann Phillips?
Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl Blake.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Phillips Hall, and I'm the Assistant Director for Job Plus Bed-Stuy. And I am looking forward to having a wonderful networking event with my team.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cheryl. And would you like to choose who will go next?
You're looking forward to.
Let's go with Petal Payne.
Thank you.
Thank you. Petal, Clinical and Wellness Coordinator with America Works Job Plus Brownsville, and I am certainly looking forward to the weekend. I will pass it to Wendy Maldonado.
Thanks, Petal.
Yes, thank you. My name is Wendy Maldonado. I am career development specialist, Job Plus North Beside, and I'm grateful for the opportunities that life gave to me.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. And would you be so kind as to choose someone to pass it to?
Yes, I pick Angela.
Hi, Angela Gagne, Woodside Jobs Plus Program Director with America Works. I am looking forward to my trip to Maryland this weekend,
Great.
and I'm going to pass it to Tarlise.
Hi everyone, my name is Tarlise and I am the Career Specialist Development at Job Plus Staten Island. And something that I'm looking forward to is getting more sleep on the weekend. And I'm gonna pass it forward to Bernice.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Rainey Silvera. I'm the employment coordinator at Equus Jobs Plus in Staten Island. And something that I'm looking forward to is on Friday. And I'm going to pass the mic to your hiring host.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shahida George. I am the educational specialist, Job Plus. And one thing that I look forward to is apple picking and pumpkin picking with my children this week.
Wonderful. Some fall activities. Do you want to choose who to pass it to next, Jahida?
Yes, I'm sorry. Miss Wendy Maldonado.
Sorry, Wendy has already gone. Would you like me to
Okay.
suggest somebody who hasn't gone yet?
Miss Letty Leo.
Hi everyone, my name is Letty DeLeo and I'll be co-presenting with Marina today. So I'm from CIMH. And one thing I'm looking forward to is just this colder weather. I know not everyone loves it, but I like to be a little bit chilly and pull out my sweater. So I'm excited for it. And I will pass on to Allison Turk.
Maybe Allison's having trouble with audio. Allison, feel free to jump in if you are.
She's having audio issues.
Okay, thanks, Angela. We can pass it to Sedaine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sedaine. I am the Clinical and Wellness Coordinator for Jobs Plus North or Bedside. I am looking forward to my friend's birthday celebration next week, about the end of this week. I'm grateful for life.
Thank you, Sedaine. And do you mind
Pass it on, right. Kayla Lee.
Hi everyone, my name is Kayla Lee and I'm the community coach at Eastside House Job Plus, and I'm looking forward to and grateful for planning my son's first birthday this weekend.
So special. Do you mind choosing who to pass it to next, or would you like a suggestion?
Lorna Woolery.
Good afternoon. I'm Lorna Woolery. I'm the Assistant Director with Job Plus at Eastside Settlement. I am looking forward to just getting some rest this weekend and just relaxing. Yes, can I get a suggestion who to pass it to?
Sure. What about Ruth Ann Goodrich?
Okay, Miss Goodrich it is.
Share your name, organization, and role as something you're grateful for. I'm grateful for life.
Okay. Was that you, Shanice? Sorry, I'm toggling between the little pictures of people here, trying to make sure I see who's speaking. But let's go ahead.
Sorry, that was me. I'm putting myself on mute. I apologize.
No worries. You want to choose who will go next?
I literally just joined in.
Oh, right. Okay. So, what if we pass it to, um, Josh Carrion?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Carrion. I'm the employment coordinator for Eastside House Jobs Plus. And I am looking forward to, I have a group of friends that we meet every night during October virtually to watch a Halloween themed movie. And the movie tonight is one of my personal favorites, Practical Magic. And I will pass it to Brianna Tello.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brianna. I'm the education specialist at America Works Jobs Plus in Woodside. And something I'm looking forward to is I'm actually going back for a football game at my college this weekend, so I'm excited for that. And I'll pass it over to Miss Sharitha Franklin.
Thanks, Brianna. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Sharitha Franklin, the educational coordinator with I'm not the educational coordinator, I'm so sorry. I'm the employment coordinator with Jobs Plus Brownsville. I am looking forward to the upcoming holiday season to spend with some family. And seeing all the beautiful decorations in the communities and you know, just the holiday theme music and everything that comes along with the holiday season. So I am looking forward to that. I will go ahead and pass it on to Jordan Evelis.
How you doing? My name is Jordan Aviles. I'm a community coach at Eastside House, Jobs Plus Settlement. And one thing I am looking forward to is getting more sleep. And I will pass it to Kiva Castro.
Yeah, Ms. Castro's having audio issues. Let's pass it to Jamal Howard.
How you doing? My name is Jamal Howard. I'm employed with the Staten Island Jobs Plus. I'm the security guard, front desk administrator, and I'm just looking forward to the good weather to come back.
Great. Thank you. And do you want to choose who will go next, or would you like me to?
You can choose.
Okay, Miss Phyllis Reynoso.
Hello, good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ms. Reynoso. I'm a career development specialist with Jobs Plus at Eastside House, and I'm looking forward to spend time with my grandchildren this weekend. I don't know who to pass it to. Let's see.
I can suggest someone if you'd like. Up to you. Mr. Stephen Cox.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Cox, and I'm a career development specialist with Jobs Plus Brooklyn North. Right now, the only thing I'm really looking forward to is the new season of Chucky on Hulu.
Thank you, Stephen. And would you like me to pick, or do you want to pick who goes next?
I will pass it on to Miriam.
Hi, my name is Mariam Arbavi. I'm at the Job Place, coach at Job Place North. What I wish everybody good health and continue to do the good things.
Thank you. And would you like to pick who goes next, or would you like me to?
You can pick up anybody.
Okay, Miss Marangeli Jones.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Marangeli Jones, and I am the Clinical and Wellness Coordinator at Eastside House. And I'm looking forward to the holiday season and spending time with family and friends. And I'm always grateful for my family and close ones. Thank you. Cheryl Blake.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Blake. I'm the program assistant at Job Plus Eastside House. This weekend, I'm looking forward to see my granddaughter so we can make candy apples together.
Great, thank you. And would you like me to pick who goes next?
No, I'll pick someone. Nilda Badito.
My name is Nilda Bonilla. I'm community coach at Eastside House Settlement, and I'm looking forward
Sorry,
to
I
just the
said your name
weekend.
wrong.
I know, it's okay. And I'll pass it to
Nilda, I didn't hear what
I
you
don't
were
know.
looking forward to. I think you were cut off.
Oh, I said just the weekend itself.
Oh, just okay.
I don't know if Jordan logged in, but Jordan Avilas,
Jordan
Jordan
just,
went.
he
yeah.
went. So you can pick
Kayla.
somebody. Oh,
Kayla.
Kiva Castro.
Kiva already went in the chat actually because she's having some audio issues.
You can
Miss
pick for me.
Francisca, yeah, Kayla's also already gone. Francisca Crockett.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Francisca Crockett. I'm the Clinical Wellness Coordinator for Job Plus program, and I'm looking forward to going to Texas for Thanksgiving. And I'm grateful for life.
Thank you so much. Would you like to choose who to pass it to? Do you want me to?
Yes, can you? Because I'm just not sure who didn't go. Thank you.
We're getting down to the end here. Miss Janet Cooper. Maybe Miss Janet Cooper's also having audio issues. Laura Rosado.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Rosado. I'm the education specialist at Jobs Plus North, Bed-Stuy, Restoration. I'm looking forward to Friday.
Great. And
I want to pass it on to Terrence.
great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Terrence Mason. I'm the director of Jobs Plus North. I'm grateful for being here, and I'm looking forward to being fully staffed in the near future, hopefully.
Great. Yes, we also look forward to that. Is it okay if I pass it to the next person?
Sure.
Aura Olivaria.
Hi, everybody. I'm the Clinical Wellness Coordinator at Henry Street Jobs Plus, and I'm looking forward to going out in the sun today for a little bit for my break.
Great. And do you mind if I choose someone to pass it to?
Yes, please. I'm sorry. I haven't been able to keep track, so I'm not sure who didn't go.
No worries. Miss Connie Mendez.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Connie. I'm the Senior Director of Employment Services at Henry Street Settlement. Was formerly the Director of Jobs Plus. And I want to second Terrence in terms of like almost being staffed up, but a part of me also is looking forward to my birthday on the 30th. So, you know, it's a lot of, and Halloween, of course. So I'm going to pass it to, I know Maria didn't go. So Maria.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the handoff, Connie. Literally and figuratively, I am the new Jobs Plus director at Henry Street Settlement on the Lower East Side. And I'm super grateful to refill up my water bottle because, or looking forward to, excuse me, to refill up my water bottle because I am super dehydrated and it's staring at me as I do this intro. And I'm super grateful for water.
Great. Thank you, Maria. And we just have one more. Oh no, I think everybody's gone who's not having audio issues. We really appreciate those of you who have checked in the chat. If you're having audio issues, thanks so much for being here. All of you, I heard some really wonderful things folks are looking forward to, from Halloween to apple picking and pumpkins and everything. So thanks for being here. We can go ahead and get into a little bit of our discussion today. First, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the PHQ-9 and how we use it to engage with our members. Next slide, please. So we'll be having a group discussion here where we're talking a little bit about consumer engagement in terms of what's going well when you're using the PHQ-9 with members and what is more challenging or tricky about that. And so we're going to be breaking up into 2 breakout groups where Dr. DeLeo and I will each support one of them. And we would love to hear from you about how things have been going in terms of your use of the PHQ-9. So just give our team a moment to divide people into breakout groups, and then hopefully we'll see that invitation in just a moment. Oh, I'm being told that we didn't anticipate a breakout. Okay, let's just have a discussion here. So let's back up to the first question. What is going well in terms of using the PHQ-9 for folks?
Well, I've observed when properly administered, it gives the staff a good indication of who's ready to go for a job and who needs more time before that can happen.
Absolutely. So it can help really distinguish between folks who need a little bit more support in the moment and folks who are really doing it well enough in terms of balancing their emotions to be really present in an interview or really put their best foot forward in a job. Great. Thank you for that, Terrence. Anyone else want to point out anything else that's going well with screening?
I think it also gives the member an opportunity to like figure out their own sort of baseline and their overall functioning. Because I guess like a lot of times I'm not asked like, so how are you sleeping? And how's your anxiety been? On a scale of 1 to 10, and giving them the comfort and the sense of like you could be vulnerable and talk about these things. And a lot of times we're the only ones that they feel comfortable talking to, and they may have unmet mental health needs. And this is another thing that gives a little bit of light on that, like how long they've been sort of like dealing with these issues and what kind of crisis, management or crisis intervention services would be the most impactful.
Absolutely. So thinking a little bit about, how we can best serve them and also helping them maybe have that reflective moment, which we don't always practice having about like, oh, how am I sleeping? Maybe those are things that just make me more aware from having that question asked of like, hey, I'm actually noticing that I'm not sleeping very well, or there are other things that I could be doing in terms of my mood in general. And maybe I don't always take that time because I have a lot of other things on my plate, right? So such a good point. Thank you, Connie. Anyone else have thoughts about what is helpful about administering the PHQ-9 or what's going well in terms of the way that it's administered at your site?
Yeah, I do. So the PHQ-9 is an opportunity to visit the idea that the mental health component of this workforce development program, Jobs Plus, is really at the forefront in the center of wraparound services meets holistic care meets getting ready or being developed for the workforce. It opens dialogue with both the team, the staff, and the members about a very stigmatic topic, mental health and mental wellness, and how that correlates to executive function and how that correlates to moving forward in life. So that's the best part about using the PHQ-9, I think, that it opens dialogue and introduces the idea that it's more than just workforce development. It also kind of breaks up that thing that we're a temp agency. And come in and say, I want a job, and we're just going to place you in a job. So it gives more room to talk more about what this program really is and what it is supposed to be doing inside the community.
Thank you so much, Sidane. So 3 really important points there. One, it's moving beyond workforce development to that wraparound support and thinking about the person as a whole. And 2, that helps us think about how we can support problem solving those issues that may arise in those dialogues about mental health. And also it opens dialogue about mental health because that's such a stigmatized topic. So thank you so much for those points. Any other things about what might be going well using the PHQ-9? Are there specific ways that you can use it that feel most comfortable, or strategies that have helped it feel most helpful to members?
I feel like the first question is usually one that I have to repeat a few times because it's interesting to think about having pleasure in doing everyday things and like having that conversation with the member. But also like using open-ended questions so that when they're confused about how to answer it, like maybe there's one part of the question that they do agree that may be something they're struggling with. And I guess kind of like having a larger conversation outside of that, that maybe something we can help them with and they weren't aware that we could. So yeah, I think for me, just having open-ended questions that follow up on what they might be thinking has been helpful for me.
Right. So thank you so much for that, Aura. 2 points there. One is more about the barrier of people not understanding the first item and needing to kind of repeat that, but then also using the PHQ-9 as a jumping off point to have those open-ended questions to follow up and build that understanding of what the consumer needs or what the member needs and how we can support them better, because there is that really important point about the ways in which we want to use this to better understand the member and offer them support that they might not otherwise be aware that we're able to offer them. Thank you so much for that. Any other things about, we can open this up to the second question as well. What's going well and or what barriers do you face with the PHQ-9?
One thing that I get for sure when it comes to the PHQ-9s is the question where it asks if feeling down, depressed, or hopeless. I get a lot of people, they say they're not depressed, but they're overwhelmed. And so they don't answer that, they'll answer that question as a 0 because they don't see the word overwhelmed there. They're like, oh no, I'm not depressed and I don't feel hopeless, but I may feel overwhelmed at the moment. So what I tend to do is just maybe like, when I'm putting my notes in, I'll put that, members said they felt a bit overwhelmed, and I still tell them to answer it like it's kind of, I'm trying to think of how I put it. I ask them if they feel like they're overwhelmed, how the fact that they're overwhelmed, do they feel like it's close to depression? And they're like, I don't think I'm depressed. I just think I just may be overwhelmed because maybe they're looking for a job or they want to get back into school. So it's all, that's been like my most difficult part of the PHQ-9.
So that piece of like people just not being comfortable saying that they have depression, because that feels like a stigmatizing word, but they're having a lot of emotional overwhelm that they just don't feel comfortable labeling in that way.
Exactly what it is.
So that sounds like it might be helpful for us to think about that and absolutely make notes of that. But I wonder if it would be helpful to ask why they don't consider that depression, because I think that there's actually, there's a lot of misunderstandings about depression. This is something we talk about a little bit in module 1, section 3. There's a lot of misunderstandings about depression. People often think depression just means sadness, but sometimes depression can actually look like anger. It can look like feeling really overwhelmed and kind of burnt out and not feeling anything. So there's a lot of different ways it can show up. And just because somebody isn't like, crying all the time or like acting like, Eeyore, doesn't mean that they aren't depressed. So I think that it might, in some cases, and you can decide for yourself whether this is part of your style or whether this is comfortable for the members that you are working with. But in some cases, it might be helpful to say something like, I hear that you're really overwhelmed. And to me, that does sound a little bit like being depressed or down or hopeless in some ways, that this is an emotional burden you're carrying. How often do you feel overwhelmed? And then answer that question according to the number of days that in the last 2 weeks, they've felt that way. But how does that sound to you, Desiree?
That actually sounds good. And it's actually along lines of what I was actually what I do with the members when I speak with them, because I let them know that there's like different depression is like, I feel like you said it exactly how I say it. Depression does not always mean, depression does not always just look like sadness. There's actually people, I explain to a lot of the members, there's people that are they walk around with a smile on their face, and they move around doing things that they do on a daily basis, but they still may be, depressed. They can be a functional depressed person. So I try to explain. So I think that works. That it definitely sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Desiree, for bringing that up. And also I saw Sedane's hand. Sedane, did you want to mention something?
Well, I was just gonna say that you guys gave us some great reading material and handouts when we were there, like initially last time. Who knows how long ago it was. But yeah, so one side has a little bit about depression, the other side has a little bit about anxiety. And so that's, we can use stuff like that as well to kind of talk about thinking outside the box when we're thinking about depression and anxiety.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what the outreach, oh, sorry. I didn't.
No, that's okay. I'm not a clinician, so I can't, I try to stay away from nailing it down to this is depression or, this is anxiety. I usually go into, how have you been coping with some of the symptoms that you've been experiencing? And then, get into talking to or focusing in on what the next step is going to be, if it's going to be a connection to care referral. So yeah, because then you have to go through, well, that's not depression. I find that we have to reiterate a lot of times that we're just thinking about the last 14 days. And sometimes people are taking medications or they're dealing with something that just recently happened, and they may have heightened experiences with some of those symptoms. So if you're not clarifying that through the conversation, they automatically relate it back to, oh, I've been doing this my whole life, or yes, I've been experiencing that. And it could just be that they are, vicariously grieving with a friend or family member, or they may have started some new medication. So now I just wanted to point out that because I'm not a clinician, I try to stay away from, the depression and anxiety conversation and nailing that down to a actual diagnosis, because we know we're not diagnosing, but other people, take language and create a narrative in their mind that could be problematic later.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sedane. So many really important points. One, there are some outreach materials that we've provided that explain what anxiety and what depression are. So if you are interested in sharing that, Desiree or other folks who are bringing up this question and having people kind of talk their way around answering positively to these questions when they are saying, I am feeling pretty negative, I just don't want to call it depression. We can provide that psychoeducation if that feels appropriate with that member. But Sinead, as you're saying, like, we also want to respect your style and your approach and what feels comfortable for you, and also the ways in which you recognize the limits of your role. We aren't asking anyone to diagnose, because we're actually not asking enough questions to be able to give somebody like a disorder diagnosis, right? We don't know if this is an episode or this is part of a longer term disorder they're experiencing or what. So we're not in that position with this information. This is just to get a sense, kind of like taking their temperature of how they're doing right now. And that includes, like, even if they've had a recent life event, like changing medication or being in grief or something, we still really want to know how they've been doing the last 2 weeks, even if that's not the way that they normally do, because that way we can try to get them some support if that's something they're interested in. I see some really great points in the chat as well, and I just wanted to mention those. So Josh was mentioning a positive is that mental health is often demonized in our communities, and this offers a small introduction to thinking about the field of mental health and potential support or assistance without presenting as the things that we often hear about. And that's a really important component. And, you know, people do really fear these labels. And that's one of the reasons why we really want to let you do this in your own style. Some people are really comfortable saying, like, you know, having a mental health concern is just like having a physical health concern. If you break your arm and you get the medical care you need, it's going to heal right up in 6 to 8 weeks and you'll feel much better. So I just want to make sure you are aware that there's that option of getting additional support if you want, because I know you're suffering right now and things will heal much faster if you get that support that you need. It doesn't mean this is permanent, right? Your arm is not going to be broken forever, but it is really helpful. And a lot of folks have seen a lot of improvement by getting this kind of support. However, if you would prefer not to do that, that's your choice. And I want to just offer that because I see that you're suffering, and I want to make sure you know you have that option. But absolutely, there's so much concern about being labeled crazy or fear about being seen as weak or less than, that it's hard for people to admit this sometimes. And it's also hard for people to accept offers of support. So another thing that you can say if somebody does refuse a referral is just to say, that's totally your choice. I want to respect that. But also, if you change your mind, you can come back and contact me later, because I want to make sure you are aware. We want to be here for you in the future. So because folks often need some time to think about that and kind of get over their own fear about that. It might not be the first time you mention it that folks are ready to accept a referral. And also Cheryl and Phillips mentioned that the PHQ-9 creates a baseline for realizing that they have these feelings, and then they can see if those feelings change, which is pretty similar to that point that Connie was making earlier about improving folks' awareness, right? And helping folks be aware, oh, am I sleeping? I guess maybe I should pay attention to that. That's important, right? Also, some barriers, including members not consenting to the PHQ-9 and willingness to accept care referrals, which totally understandable. Any other points about barriers or what's going well?
Sorry,
I
I
want
just
to
have
call a
one.
barrier.
Go ahead, Terrence. I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sure. Okay.
It's okay.
I kind of wish, and maybe because I am a social worker and I've done a lot of case management and just client care work, I almost wish they had another, like a follow-up questionnaire. I feel like it leaves you in, like, you get this information, but it's hard to tie the impact of their anxiety or their lack of sleep or their lack of feeling motivated to how it impacts their employment specifically. How has it impacted your last 3 employment opportunities? How is it impacting your ability to parent? You know, like your relationships with your spouse or your children. Like, I just feel like we need something else after, so that we can easily connect the dots. Because you can make a referral, but if the person doesn't see that this is impacting them in their financial world, their social, emotional world, their family life, their relationship life, it'll just be another questionnaire that happens. And then maybe a session later, it could help motivate them to attend, further mental health or case management treatment. Because I know in Henry Street, we have two types of services built in-house. Like we have case management and we have sort of like mental health. And I think that I could say for the non-clinical staff at my Jobs Plus program, they have a hard time deciphering between the two. Like, is this a case management situation or is this a mental health situation? And Out and we have to like ask 15 more questions to kind of figure out what is the right pathway to help them address or to try to mitigate some of the intensity of what they're feeling. I just think that it should follow up with another type of questionnaire.
So I'm sorry, Connie. I just wanted to jump right on that right away while it's hot. This is why I feel like it's important for us to kind of move just a little bit past engagement and referrals and begin to train and talk about trauma-informed care and motivational interviewing. I think if we are all trained really well in how to talk about the conversation of executive functioning and what that means and how important it is to understand toxic stress and then how to change behaviors and incite wanting to change for the better, incite confidence that they can do better. It will be easier to have a conversation about making a referral.
Thank you so much for that suggestion. I'm taking notes on that. I know our team is too, and that's definitely something we will bring back to HRA. I know we have Chandrea on this call, but we'll bring it back to our team leaders and ask about potentially incorporating a questionnaire that really helps folks consider questions about functioning and thinking about what kinds of support we can offer in terms of motivational interviewing and supporting behavior change, because we do want to be able to do that. It's a little tricky because as you may know, we originally thought that this was going to involve clinicians at every site. And so we had a planned program in which our clinical wellness coordinator teams would be supported by those clinicians in doing a lot more stuff. And we don't feel comfortable doing the program as we planned it with without the clinician support, which most sites don't have. So I think just for us, understanding what you're seeing on the ground and what would be most useful in that work is really helpful. And we want to make the program adapt to be most supportive of members. So we'll definitely bring that back and we'll hope that we can implement those changes for you. So thanks for those important points. Terrence, I know you also wanted to jump in.
Oh yes, what I wanted to share was it's not a barrier as such. I'm speaking staff wise, is more of a challenge, and that I know it was a taboo subject to discuss mental health and wellness. So it kind of comes across with me seeing the staff how they deliver or don't deliver the PHQ-9. It's seen as something that this is a function of the clinician or the wellness coordinator, and they are the experts at administering this PHQ-9. Whereas other staff members, we encourage the task sharing, but staff is not as comfortable as the clinician was or CDN is in administering the PHQ-9 to members. So some of the more education, more training along that would make it easier for staff to be able to do this with members.
Yeah, and that's hopefully something that we'll cover more today. If you have specific points that you'd like to raise now or at the end of this training, and let us know, what specifically are the areas that you'd like to make sure we cover in training, we can certainly, we'll cover some today, but hopefully if we don't cover them today, we can cover them in future trainings as well. Are there areas you're thinking of within like sort of the engagement around the stigma of mental health and talking to people about these issues?
I wouldn't say specific area, just the idea of going through a health questionnaire that's surrounding mental health, sorry, is something that most members do not want to discuss when it comes to the door. and some staff are not as savvy administering this to those challenging members as a CDN would be. So that's just my point. So we've actually started doing some in-house trainings we are seeing and make our staff more comfortable in the way they make it a living document as opposed to just here, fill this out for us. Because then the scores are vastly different when it's done in a conversational form as opposed to when a person fills it out and gives it back to you. Because you can have all zeros as opposed to a score that you could really get something from and work with the member towards improving their situation.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to second Connie's point that that's a workshop, mental wealth, thinking about this as a wellness-oriented intervention, right? Not that we're saying there's something wrong with you, but saying like, we want to help you build wellness. We want to help you set you up to succeed. And that means succeed in employment, but also succeed in all of the areas of functioning that matter to you, whether that's socially or in terms of your spiritual well-being, any other type of well-being that matters to you can be supported by taking some of these steps to get the support that you need to manage your emotions in the way that feels most comfortable to you. Absolutely, Terrence, such an important point about thinking about engaging folks in a way that is really verbal and generous and helping them talk through the items. As Desiree was talking about, we do see that folks can be confused about what the items mean. And rather than asking that, if we hand it to them, they will just write down 000, right? Because they're like, I don't know what that is. Probably not. Right. But then if we do administer it one-on-one, we do see that we get some different responses. And that is something we're really excited to announce. HRA just released this data to us today. And we saw that, there was a really significant decrease in the number of folks who were answering only zeros on the PHQ-9. So we're going to talk more about that in our coaching meeting tomorrow. But props to all the clinical wellness coordinators and to everybody else who is administering the PHQ-9, because we are seeing a lot of progress in terms of getting folks to talk about these issues and helping them kind of build that culture of comfort and support around these issues. So totally agree, Terrence. I think it's way more effective when we have those conversations with people rather than handing them that sheet of paper. And hopefully that is part of what we're seeing in terms of the progress around that. We will be presenting that data in the coaching meeting tomorrow, but if anyone else is interested in that, we can also share that after the coaching meeting. And I see, there's also a really good point here from Josh asking what support is planned for staff. And depending on the level of trauma and the community members' willingness to share sensitive information that can sit with us and be heavy, are there plans for increased information about mental health support for social workers? Yes. So a couple of things. One is we do offer coaching that's biweekly, where we're meeting with the clinical wellness coordinators and trying to offer that support around things. We've just started that though, so I know we're still building those relationships and folks may not yet feel comfortable, but that meeting is pretty small. That meeting's not recorded. The idea there is to provide support around whatever's coming up for folks around implementing the program. We also can provide recommendations for, support around mental health. If folks would like a recommendation of a sliding scale therapist or something like that, we can also make some recommendations there. So there's a lot of good options within the world of that stuff. There's apps, there's therapists, there's everything in between. So, I know a lot of folks have busy schedules and it may be easier to figure out a remote option or something like that. We encourage everybody to try that out for themselves as well and see how that sits, because it is true. There's a lot of in this kind of work, there's a lot of sitting with people as they talk about their stress that can be stressful for us as well. And we do talk about that as well in module 2, where we talk about provider self-care. We offer some tips for coping and thinking about protecting our energy and protecting our space as providers. So we really appreciate that that's a focus as well. I want to make sure that we get to everybody's comments about barriers and or what's going well with the PHQ-9. Do we have any other comments before we move forward?
Yeah, in my experience, I noticed that when we doing the PHQ-9 and asking the questions, everybody is usually have that wall in front of them. They're not wanting to open up. But when I mentioned that we have the mental wellness workshops, they rather go to those, they say, rather than going out for a referral for mental health, because they always say, well, I'm not crazy. And as everybody else was saying that, it's always that barrier that they don't want to do it. I'm just stressed, or they use other words to try to, I guess, make it feel better. And so I think that using those workshops really work, because after that, I've noticed that people have opened up and they feel that it's more normal to do that rather than get those referrals for mental health services. So that's what have worked for me in recent weeks.
Thanks so much, Marangeli. So some really important points there. Folks may prefer not to get referred out to a mental health professional that feels scary. It might be helpful to consider bringing a mental health professional to the wellness workshops. If you have, a mental health organization that you refer to a lot, or one that's across the street or something, if they can come and visit even for like 5-10 minutes and say like, hi, I'm Dr. Marina and I'm available for appointments or whatever, I think it can just help put a friendly face to that, because it's not about creating a space where anybody's being punished or anybody's being told that they're wrong or they're not capable of thinking on their own, right? And I think a lot of the times folks who are experiencing mental health concerns can be really afraid. And also maybe other people are already telling them, right, you're crazy, or you're not good enough, or there's something wrong with you, right? And those kinds of messages can make it harder to feel comfortable engaging. So such an important point. Thank you so much. I saw a couple of hands. Miss Iris de la Luz.
So Marina, we had a workshop where we talked about giving your emotions color. And so some of those emotions were, of course, the colors were brighter than others and so on. And it was actually a painting opportunity, right? And so it involved wellness. Ranjali was in the room and we were able to host this energizer / awareness of your feelings. And so folks had an opportunity in a group setting to go ahead and talk about their feelings in the last 30 days and why they felt maybe like a little bit heavy. They had brain fog. They didn't know that this was related to some anxiety that they were going through, some depression and so on. And so what we did at the end of that workshop, I mean, Marangeli was seeing folks one at a time, just pulling them in and having those conversations. But there was a goal. There was a goal sheet to say, hey, what made me feel good? And these are the things that I'm going to be doing for the next couple of days to go ahead and ward off these negative feelings and so on. So the feelings of you're depressed or you're going crazy or whatever, I mean, that should never be in our vocabulary, but instead give them the ownership to say, hey, last month I was just like feeling really blue and, I disconnected from my friends. And that's a bad thing for me to do. I should be, connecting to my friends. I should be doing X, Y, and Z. So it was very successful. I thought we had 12 people show up. And then what we saw towards the end, everybody became sort of this community of now, let me tell you what you can do. You can actually, I'm signed up for this or with this activity, and you can come and you can get some dancing lessons and you can do this. And so the synergy that created was so wonderful. It was just so wonderful. So I would say to you, I would encourage you, if you can build in this PHQ-9s, especially for the re-engagements, if you can build them to some type of energizer, because what we did was we read a question and we gave them 2 minutes to quietly think to themselves, and then they would write their responses. And then we talked about it really generally without exposing anyone. So if you can build it into an energizer, I say, I would recommend that.
Amazing. That's a really helpful suggestion, Iris. And I think that it also really helps normalize these kinds of experiences when we're able to have a supportive group discussion where it's like, oh, I didn't want to admit that I was feeling down, but actually
Yes.
have been feeling down, right? So
Mhm.
that's a really important piece of our supportive approach. We can tell people that it's normal, but actually being in that group setting where they're like, oh, it is normal, all of us feel this way, it feels much more reassuring than just being told by us, maybe. So that's a really great suggestion. Thank you for that. And Corwin, I also see your hand. Do you want to jump in?
I just wanted to say that I kind of start off with myself. Like, and when I administer the PHQ-9, especially when I see zeros, I'm like, wow, it depends on what's going on in my life during that time will determine my answer. And that kind of creates dialogue and they begin to engage. And now the zeros change to a 2 or 3. But using myself as an example, making them feel comfortable, it's like my personal icebreaker for the group or for the individual. And it kind of helps them, begin to open up and relax a little bit, which creates, friendship or relationship. So I'm able to go back and speak with them again in the future. But yeah, I guess engaging, developing that relationship with them for the time being kind of helps.
Absolutely. And I think that is such an important point, Corwin, because often folks are engaging with us feeling like we have a lot of power and authority in the space
Right.
as people who are administering these measures. And if we're really real and say, you know what, I'm really stressed out today, I would probably score a 6 on this measure today. It's really helpful for them to be like, oh, it's okay for that to be the case. You're not going to look
Yeah.
at me and tell me I'm crazy because you've never felt any of these things in your life, right? And having that piece can be helpful. But I think it also is something that is up to people's personal style. And some people might not feel comfortable talking about their feelings with members, and that's okay too. But it's really great if that is the approach that you find to work for helping people feel comfortable, because I think it does equalize that power dynamic a bit to just be real like that. Such an important point. It also really supports normalization, which I think Iris was mentioning as well, and reassurance, which are parts of our consumer engagement model. Do you have other things you wanted to mention about that?
No, that's pretty it for me.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, does anyone have other things you wanted to add before we move on?
Mariana, I agree with Kerwin. We use the same approach as well. You kind of, you get into the same, I don't want to say, well, maybe level, but the same comfort zone to say, hey, I'm human and you see me here working and so on. But hey, let me tell you, I had a bad week. And so I was feeling and, I feel like community kind of connects with you and they say, it's not a crazy thing, we're just operating, because I feel as humans we're just operating, right? We're waking up, taking that train, getting on the bus, moving, and it's thinkless, right? We're on this just make it happen mode, and you don't realize the stress that you put on yourself. You don't realize where it can take you, right? Just personal experience. And so whenever you have those conversations with people and you are saying, hey, we're all kind of experiencing something, I think it humanizes the whole experience and people will open up and they will share things. In the last session that we had 12 people, and Mariana, out of the 12, 10 of them scored so high that we were like, wait, we need backup here. Because Marangeli was really overwhelmed towards the end of the day. And so, again, I agree with Kerwin that if you kind of personalize that and you become, human and you kind of share your own experiences, what happens is they open up a lot more. So you give the ownership and then let them kind of flourish what they need to expose and so on.
Absolutely. And I know that it can feel really overwhelming to have lots of people admit these things all at the same time, but it's really, really positive for them. Even if they don't go any further and they don't get any other referrals, it's really positive for them to have a space to talk about that stuff, right? Because
Absolutely.
often folks are feeling really lonely or isolated when they feel that overwhelmed, and they're thinking there's something wrong with me, or no one else feels the way that I feel, or I'm really struggling more than other people. And we know that a lot of folks are struggling. A lot of folks are struggling all the time, right? It's not easy to be looking for work. It's not easy to be living in NYCHA housing. There are a lot of other struggles folks are coming to us with, and we know that.
Well, we have the holidays coming in, and this is the darkest of season that we're going into, right? Folks are disconnected from their families. You know, the harvest season comes, they don't have anywhere to, you know, go to a table and sit and have a dinner. They're by themselves. Christmas is coming, and so how do we, I mean, it's going to get worse before it gets any better, right? And so the dark months are here. This is when things get a little bit, so yeah, we need backup.
Absolutely. And needing that backup is so human. And as Corwin was mentioning, like, it can be really helpful. Sounds like that's also something that you use. How did you wind up responding to folks who were, you know, indicating that they were having severe depressive symptoms?
Are you talking to me or Corwin? Me?
Sorry.
Okay. So basically, some of them scored really, really high. And so, like I said, Marangeli was able to step in and just kind of make quick referrals. And then the ones that we weren't able to make quick referrals because we couldn't find, we had them come back the next day. And then she started to see them one-on-one and so on. And they were happy to come back. Right. There were some that scored like a 27. So, you know, that was like, oh, come with me. Let's have this private conversation. And those that score 19 or below, we, you know, you can wait the next day and you can have a follow-up and so on. So it's also when you start exposing, who do you have on hand that's able to support and sustain the work that you want to do? Because you don't want to, at the end of the day, you don't want to say, well, okay, we'll see you next week. No, we need to see you today, or we need to see you tomorrow early in the morning, you know, coffee and donuts on us. We need to talk and so on. And I think if you, on the urgency, if you give them the ownership, but circle it back really quickly, I think you're going to be okay.
Absolutely. I think that's a great solution. And I think it also conveys to those folks that you care, right? You're not like,
yes,
this is just my job, I'm going to do this next week. It's like, oh no, I hear you and I'm going to respond.
yes.
Right now. So that's a really important message as well. Thank you so much for that, Iris.
Oh, you're welcome.
Does anyone else want to add anything before we move forward to a really brief discussion of consumer engagement? Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward to the next slide. So we've talked a little bit in some of the modules about this, but I just wanted to run through this because I think this is kind of the foundation of the way we think about consumer engagement. And this incorporates some of the things that Sedaine was talking about and that Aura was talking about, relating to how we show up for consumers and how we use those motivational interviewing techniques and those open-ended questions to support folks. So our first part of our strategy here is really to be with folks. And this can look differently for different people. I know that Corwin mentioned his style, and Iris mentioned that this beautiful group that y'all have been running at Eastside House, there were these styles of self-disclosure as part of being with, right? Of being like, this is normal, I feel this way too. And that can be great as well, right? But that's thinking about being with the person, not being in a position of authority, not just doing your job, but actually, how do you show up and show them that you're present? So we suggest, one, asking those open-ended questions to understand their interpretation of their experience, right? It's not just, you know, I'm feeling bummed today, but like, why do you feel it bummed today? And what's been going on with that? And we also want to validate, affirm, and normalize. So that can be like, it's normal to feel that way. I feel that way. It's normal to feel that way. Lots of people feel that way. It's okay to feel that way. And also looking for ways to affirm them. So saying like, it's really strong of you to be able to admit that. Not everybody can admit that, right? So looking for ways that we can affirm their strengths as part of that interaction. Any questions about the being with part? This may seem like being with as an idea may seem kind of simple, but it's actually really healing for folks because, as we mentioned, folks tend to isolate when they are feeling negatively. And that's because our culture does teach us that it's not okay to feel that way, or it means that something's permanently wrong with us, right? We don't feel that way about physical illness. We don't think like, oh, I have a cold, I'm going to have a cold forever. Everybody's going to hate me because this is who I am now, right? But we have that experience with mental health problems. And I think it can be really helpful for us to keep that in mind. I don't see anyone jumping in, so I'll just move on to the next section here, which is like, we want to focus on being with first. We really want to understand the member and their experience from their perspective before we move on to providing education. And that's because we want to know what needs they have and how they feel about those needs. They might say, you know, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, but I don't want it to call it depression. And I don't want to go for any kind of outside referral, but I'm interested in potentially something here, right? So then we can offer them, education about the available support on site, whether that's workshops or other things, right? So first understanding what they want and what they need and how they interpret their experience so that we can offer them an appropriate intervention that feels like it is meeting their needs and responding to what they've said they need. And then if they say, I'd love to go to that workshop, but I don't have childcare or I have some other obstacle, we want to think about how we can address that with them. Maybe they don't know that there's a workshop at a time when their child's in school, or maybe they don't know that there's available childcare or something, right? We want to provide them with some problem solving, and we don't necessarily solve all their barriers in the first meeting, but maybe that means that we go to the workshop leader and say like, hey, could you consider offering a section of this at a time when folks who have kids can attend because their kids are in school, or whatever it is. We might just take that back at the moment, but we want to show them that we're interested in understanding what's preventing them from getting there and maybe working with them to address it. It's also possible that they, you know, don't have the money for a Metro card, or they need some other kind of support that we can hook them up with. Any other questions about this kind of structure for engagement? Any other thoughts? I saw some people reacting with emojis. I'm glad this is feeling positive for y'all. If nothing else, if there's nothing else to add here about consumer engagement, I know many of you have a lot of experience with this. We can just move forward to using the PHQ-9, which will be led by Letty.
All right. Hi, everyone. So we wanted to take some time to go through the PHQ-9 best practices for administering it and some specific items on there so that you can really focus on all of the consumer engagement pieces, and the PHQ-9 itself and how you go about it becomes more second nature. So we'll spend some time talking about some of the more nitty-gritty stuff of the measure so that you can really have those conversations like Terrence was mentioning. Instead of just, you know, handing the screener to someone, you're able to actually respond to their needs while you're administering it. So some best practices, Marina just spent a lot of time talking about engaging the consumer, you know, introducing yourself and why you're screening. And we'll give an example script of how you might want to consider explaining the purpose of screening so that we are framing it in that way that Marina was mentioning. So it's something that's, you know, positive and connecting them to supports and reducing some of the stigma around it. And then, of course, you know, validating, normalizing, and reassuring any of the feelings that are coming up and answering questions. When it comes to administering the screener itself, one thing we ask you to keep in mind is making sure you're asking all of the questions and getting specific answers to all of those so that the score at the end can be truly meaningful, because that score at the end is only meaningful for interpretation, you know, in terms of like the specific number, if all of the items have been counted into it. Of course, there's additional other helpful information you gather from their conversation, but when it comes to using their total score to make a specific decision, like is their score 5 or more, they might need referral to additional services. Answering all of the items is important. And then we want to think about how we're sharing those results in a way that is reducing stigma and meeting them where they're at. And we'll go through some script that has some suggestions for that as well. So jumping into how you might introduce the PHQ-9, there's a few points that we captured in these brief sentences. So we said, next, I'd like to ask you some questions about your stress so I can understand how our team can best support you in preparing for your next job. And we're aware that everyone has some stress, and having tools to address it is helpful for most people. These next questions are about how you've been feeling the last 2 weeks. So we've said what the screener is, right? The screener is some questions about their stress, and we specify that it's about the last 2 weeks to make it really concrete, not about the last year. We've said why it's useful so they can understand how your team can best support them. And then we've also done that normalizing piece that we've talked a lot about, whether that's saying, everyone has some stress, most people would benefit from tools, or saying, I know I've personally experienced some stress and it was helpful for me to connect with these tools. It's a way to really normalize it and start that initial conversation. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts about this way of introducing the screener to your members?
I guess I do. The way we try to introduce the screener there is like be a little bit more informal, because I think when we come at it as like this is our mental health specialist or our clinical and wellness coordinator, people can kind of get a little concerned. And so we always just try to say like, hey, this is Allison. She's really in charge of all of our like supportive efforts when we're trying to get you to work. So, we'd love to have her meet with you just to go over kind of the screenings and everything that's a part of her part of the program, and make it a little bit more informal and sound less clinical. Because, Allison does a phenomenal job at breaking it down in a way that I think it's more palatable.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I loved how you included how that initial introduction to the person is included, right? Because what we have on the screen right now is just kind of like a general template for, it can be applied like across situations, but then when you're actually introducing and making this warm handoff of, this is a person that you can talk to, it's then they're having more of an engaging conversation with a specific person who's the face of that screening interaction, as opposed to saying, like, here's a form, I want you to answer these 9 questions. It's going to help us make some next decisions. So I really like how you have that warm connection piece in there. And I see that Allison said, thank you in the chat. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts, questions that come up regarding introducing the PHQ-9?
I know that some of the things that we say, and again, it's relationship power, right? And so some of the things that we may say, we have an opportunity to offer you several supportive services. And in order to find out what you may be needing or looking for, we're going to ask you a couple of questions and so on. And we want to take some time with them and just kind of process what happened. I know you keep saying 2 weeks, but I like to go back to 30 days, because what happens is people say, oh, 2 weeks ago, I had a death in the family, but I'm okay now. I'm like, really? And so what happens in 30 days in the last month, I think will capture much more information and feelings of what you're going through. So I like the 30 days. But if it has to be 2 weeks, we can change that as well. But the point is that you want to be able to say, we can help you, right? And sometimes we don't even know that we need help, because again, we're just kind of operating on like next step, or culturally, we come from a background that says, don't cry, don't talk about it, it's okay, don't even process it, just keep going. And so you end up with this basket of feelings and emotions and things, and then you just like, So I like the one-on-one connection. I like that.
Yeah, thank you. And Marina, I'm going to in a moment also ask you if there's anything in terms of ways of work that you want to jump in about. But I love how you're emphasizing that connection piece. And I think earlier someone was mentioning, taking, Iris, this might have been you, taking like notes in the side. So when, they say additional information that's important for their mental health and their stress, even if it's not captured in the specific wording of the screener, we have that additional information. So it might be one of those things where you take that little note saying like, okay, in the last 2 weeks, they haven't experienced this, but making note, they did experience this, 30 days ago. So
Yes.
Marina, I want to throw it over to you if you have any thoughts on that kind of way of work.
Yeah, I think that, it's a little tricky because I absolutely want to, I know I can hear my supervisors from the past saying this says 2 weeks and it's standardized with thousands of people based on the 2 weeks stuff. So we should be doing that. But at the same time, I hear that you're building it around connecting with people around their actual experience. And to Letty's point, I think that is more important. So please, feel free to ignore this, but this is just my training is to try to keep to the time frame, just so that we get a consistent measure from most folks. However, again, like if there's been a death in the family and people are saying there's nothing going on now, but last week or two weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, they were really feeling it. I think that we can sometimes understand that as a way of admitting without admitting that they're really struggling still, and we can talk to them about that and potentially put some of that down, even if it's not something that they're totally admitting. Another thing that we often see is that people will say, oh, a stressful thing happened to my whole family and my mom is taking it really hard. My mom is really depressed, but I'm fine. And sometimes we know that is true because the person is presenting as really fine, but sometimes they're presenting as really depressed and anxious. And so over time, each of us will kind of build our skills in terms of assessing folks and understanding, are they potentially minimizing or denying their own symptoms and talking about it happening to a partner or a family member because they don't feel comfortable disclosing to us yet, right? So the ways in which we can respond warmly about like, well, it's really understandable for your partner or your mom to feel that way. It's really understandable for them to have that kind of response. And like, if they'd like to come talk to me, that's fine too. But how are you doing around this? Like, how are you doing around supporting them around that? How are you doing around, So I think that,
the transference of feelings are real. They're really, really. We had somebody come in and say, I lost my brother a month ago and I'm just starting to realize that he's no longer here. And so I'm crying in the morning. So transference of feelings are definitely real. And they don't take first seat, but that second seat can drive you crazy. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, there is some, I think that both of those kind of situations where people might be saying, oh, this happened to me in the past, but it's not happening to me all right now. Or like it happened to me in the recent past, but not in the last 2 weeks. Those kinds of things, we might hear that as a way of kind of preventing, of protecting the person from having to admit that they are experiencing this now.
Yeah.
And similarly, if they're just talking about it with someone who they're very close with, that might also be a way of protecting themselves or minimizing and denying their own experience. So we just want to be curious about that. And again, be really inclusive with the way that we complete this measure with them. So we're really including as much of the distress that we hear and that we see as possible in the questionnaire, because the point of doing the questionnaire is to get them the support they need. And I think if we frame it that way, it's really about not just like, are they having these specific symptoms now, but in what ways do they feel that they would appreciate support? So Letty, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that question, Iris. And thank you, Marina. I think that was a really helpful point of keeping in mind, like kind of the standardization of these measures, but also the greater conversation and goal of connecting people to supports. So I'm going to shift ahead to some things to keep in mind while doing the screener. And I think a lot of these are things that you all have already touched on and are already doing. So, that flexibility, we just talked about that when it comes to introducing the screener, and then making sure that we're validating emotions while still reading the questions. Sometimes it can be tempting to get really, really focused on a specific response, and it might draw us into a conversation that suddenly takes 30 minutes. And we want to be mindful of the time that you have to dedicate to the screener and also the time that your member has to participate in it. So finding that balance between really listening and validating what they're sharing, and also making sure that we cover everything that we need to cover in this screening. It can be a tricky balance to find, and it might be something that's kind of personal for your way of work. Marina mentioned affirming strengths. If they are sharing with you, like, it takes a lot of strength for you to be able to share that. And I really appreciate you opening up about that and bringing that to the table. And like we've mentioned, this being an opportunity to provide some psychoeducation around the stigma of mental illness. They might be hesitant to admit to negative feelings or be like, oh, well, wouldn't that make me weak? And taking that opportunity. So, we all experience negative emotions at one point or another. It makes us human. This is just an opportunity for us to talk about what that's been like for you, and reducing that stigma as much as possible. And then finally, to speak to Terrence's point earlier, sometimes they might answer or might fill this out on their own, and they could have like questions in their head about what certain things mean, what they're trying to get at. So having this conversation is an opportunity to maybe rephrase questions and reoffer any items if the consumer is confused or not certain about what's being asked. And we'll talk a little bit more about the specific items and some things that is helpful to keep in mind when you're asking these questions and questions that consumers or members might have. So before I jump into that, I just want to briefly review, here's what the PHQ-9 looks like. We've got our clear instructions at the top. Sometimes, you might be so focused on getting to the items that you forget to kind of provide that grounding instruction. Is we're asking, how much you've been bothered by each of these experiences over, in this case, the last 2 weeks, just providing some sort of time frame that's grounding them when they're thinking about these. And it's what makes the response options make sense to them. So did they, not experience it at all in the last 2 weeks, or were not bothered by it at all? Were they bothered by it several days? Were they bothered by it more than half of the days? That would be like more than 7 days. Or were they bothered by it every day? Sometimes we can just be ready to rush into the questions, and this is a helpful point to pause.
I'm sorry,
and make sure.
Letty. I
Yeah, go
apologize.
ahead.
If you could just go back to the previous screen
Yeah,
real quickly. Here, the considerations for screening, because, I think, well, in terms of my team, I don't know about everybody else's team, but my team, they're very familiar with the questions and the instructions of what's supposed to be done. What is different here is that we are working together with people who all don't have human service degrees. In fact, they may have never worked in social services or human services before. So there may be some resistance or even apprehension about carrying on conversations like this if they are coming from the human resources world. So these are not generally questions that you ask people when you're creating resumes or when you're, coordinating employment partnerships and sending people to jobs. Affirming strength is not a skill that a lot of people have. It's something that the majority of us, clinical and wellness and clinicians, have gone to school for, but they may not be the strengths of the other team members. So this part right here is like the meat and potatoes of, I think, why we are in this place, and kind of reiterating engagement and how to do the PHQ-9. Looking at that form again is not it. This right here, and how to rephrase questions and reoffer answers and educate, a little bit of role play, a little bit of extra training, something here is what's going to solidify us and get us to the next step. Sorry for the sake of time. I apologize if, that was kind of rough, but
No, I appreciate it, because it's important for us to hear what will be most helpful for you and supporting the people at your team. So really appreciate you taking the time, and it lets me know, okay, let's go through this next slide really quickly so that we're just saying, here's a really, really brief review, and we can get into the more meatier slides where we talk a little bit more about questions that consumers might have. And Marina, before I, forward us ahead to those, or do you have anything else that you wanted to touch base about as well?
Yeah, Sidane, I really appreciate that. And we will get into talking more about rephrasing. I just wanted to mention we'll get more into talking about rephrasing questions and re-offering kind of definitions of some of the items when consumers are confused. Because this measure, I really, I wanted to say this earlier, and I'm glad I get an opportunity now. I think that it was Auda who said that you rephrase question one a lot. Whichever person mentioned rephrasing item one a lot. I think that that's something that happens a lot for a lot of people administering the PHQ-9. And I really wish that it were updated to be language that's a little bit easier for consumers or members to really follow. Because I think that members often, don't feel comfortable asking that question. And so then they just are kind of guessing about what we're talking about, which is a problem. So hopefully this will help us kind of rephrase this. And we can also, when the first time we ask, kind of offer that definition if we think the person might benefit from that. So I'll just pass it back to you, Letty.
Yeah, so then we'll just go through this really quickly because I've already mentioned asking each question, and obviously each question getting to that specific answer will correspond to a number. That is one note that we wanted to make, though, is, sometimes, especially if you're working with someone who's new to asking these types of questions, if they get a vague response, they may not be sure how to prompt to get to a more specific answer. So wanting to make sure, if someone's saying like, oh, I don't know, like maybe sometimes, okay, what does sometimes look like for you? Like, would you say it's like maybe just a couple of days in the last 2 weeks? Or were you experiencing it more like, more than half of those days? So always referring back to those items to really help get something more concrete so that we're taking away some of those more subjective answers is helpful. And then, of course, these all add up to our final score at the bottom. And when we talk about like providing the results, we'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that in a warm way. So you're not just providing a number, but a conversation that's meaningful. So one thing that's helpful to keep in mind when we're thinking about rephrasing these questions or providing additional details is that our goal is to assess symptoms of depression in the past 2 weeks. And what you might have is people maybe misinterpreting or having a different understanding of some of the items that are being asked. So one of the items that we often get, right, we ask about trouble sleeping. And we want to keep in the back of our mind that when we think about average sleep, the CDC for adults recommends 7 to 9 hours. And there's some variability in that. My dad only needs like 5 to 6. I need like at least 8 to 9. But generally, we're thinking 7 to 9 hours. So just keeping that in mind as a grounding point for interpreting members' answers to that question. And for a lot of these, we're going to suggest keeping context in mind. So we ask about having little energy, and we need to think, okay, well, did they just have some recent travel? Did they not have their coffee this morning or last week? Those are like additional questions that you can ask to get an understanding of this. And it also can make all of these conversations more concrete. So it's not, this mental health being this vague concept of feelings we experience in our head, but also making it more grounded in like symptoms that you might actually be experiencing on the daily. When it comes to poor appetite and overeating, of course, we're not going into, and not everyone administering this screener is going to have extensive background in appropriate eating habits that are like a good fit to each individual person. We're not touching on eating disorders or those factors. So it can be helpful to just ask, is this a change, from their typical routine? Have you noticed you eating more in the last 2 weeks? Is this a decrease from how much you normally eat? So really grounding it in, going back to that conversation of, sometimes asking about the last 30 days to get an understanding of, is this a shift? When the item around trouble concentrating, again, it's important to consider context. So are they having difficulty concentrating because there is a life event that's really impacting their emotional well-being? Or is it more environmental? There's a distracting noise that's happening outside that's been making it hard for them to concentrate during, X, Y, or Z. And finally, we want to make a note about item 9 on the PHQ-9, which is thoughts about being better off dead. This is an item that if you're unused to asking questions about mental health, and also if you're asking these questions in more of like, a hiring job environment, can feel uncomfortable to ask. It's something that we'll see like in schools a lot when we're asking teachers to ask these items. And one of the main concerns that comes up around this is the idea that asking about thoughts of suicide will plant that idea in someone's head. And fortunately, we know that that's not true. When we ask, you know, have you ever had in the last 2 weeks been bothered by thoughts of you would be better off dead? We know that this gives people who have experienced that an opportunity to share that with someone, but that it does not give someone who's not experiencing that the idea of it. And so we know that from a long history of, you know, research on this topic and people's personal anecdotes about their experience being asked this question, that it's important to ask this directly to give them an opportunity of, if this is something they're experiencing, making sure that they're connected to supports and asking it in a non-judgmental way. So really just, if that means, you know, reading off the question as is and doing it just in a warm tone of voice, that is a way to make sure that you're asking this question, even if it's not something that comes naturally to you. Another concern that often comes up with this item is the idea that someone might have, you know, a strong reaction if they feel like, you know, that's not them. Why are you asking them that? And in that case, you know, it's really easy to just normalize, well, not easy, but would recommend normalizing and just saying, you know, this is something that we ask everyone to make sure everyone's safe or get an understanding of what they're experiencing. It's not something that I, you know, picked you out to ask. It's just something that I'm asking of everyone so that they know it's not them being singled out. We'll have an opportunity to think through delivering these items and helpful ways to consider the recommendations we were talking about on the previous slides. But before we get into that, does anyone have any thoughts, questions about these specific items and things to keep in mind? And I see that Marina does, so I will call on her first.
Sorry to jump in before everybody. I just wanted to mention, even if there is a contextual issue, like a life event that is distracting people or causing these changes, we really want to record those symptoms of suffering that they might be experiencing, right? So they might say, oh, I never feel this way, but I am really having trouble sleeping because I just lost this person. I can't stop thinking about it. We want to keep track of any of these because all of these could be measures of how much that person is suffering and needs support. So I'll pass it back to you, Letty. Thanks for letting me jump in there.
Yeah, does anyone have any additional thoughts or questions around this? In that case, we will move ahead, but if anything does come up, this is going to be a discussion, so please feel free to add that question in at this time. So some clarifying questions that you can ask doing the screener to get at some of those more contextual issues are, how long has this been going on and how much does that bother you, right? Because in our question, we just asked how often have you been bothered by that in the last 2 weeks, but asking how much it bothers them is like an initial opportunity to start talking about this further. And then going back to the idea of, you know, some people who will be doing this screener in an HR context may not be super familiar or comfortable asking these questions. Just practice repeatedly, maybe with a partner who's not, you know, a member, will be an opportunity to kind of get those questions rolling off of their tongue a bit more and reduce the initial worry around it before interacting with others. So our question to all of you is we'll go through each item and just ask, how would you explain this item to a member when first asking it? I know we've had a little opportunity to talk about the first one, but thinking about little interest or pleasure in doing things, how might you recommend that you ask that question or explain that item in a way that clarifies it or makes it a little more concrete?
I have a lot of experience with question number 1 because it's the one I usually get a response from. But I try to say, like, in the morning when you're getting ready for the day, are you like excited about the things that you need to get done? Like, you find that they make you happy to complete those things, whatever they are. If it's just getting up and making your bed and taking a shower, just making it super, super, like, everybody can kind of relate to this in a way. And I think that kind of prompts more of an understanding, because I think it's a little weird to think about you know, having little interest or pleasure. I wouldn't use those words. So I understand why some folks are not really like engaged by that language. So yeah.
Yeah, I like how you get concrete about it with some examples of activities. Sometimes what I find helpful too is, you know, it being a shift in the things that they typically have interest or pleasure doing. So things that they used to enjoy doing, are those things that they don't enjoy anymore. Yeah, Josh?
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that at times when you're administering the PHQ-9, you have to not just ask these questions, but have additional information or questions just to have them more comfortable with this questionnaire. So specifically for this question, but would also inform me about the follow-up questions, I would ask, you know, what are some hobbies or like matters of interest that you usually engage in? And then when we get to this question, it is, have you felt like you're not interested in doing these hobbies, you know, to gauge whether or not there's been, I guess you could say, a reduction in their energy or their interest. And um, that helps inform us whether or not we should delve into these other questions that follow up, such as question 2, question 3, question 4, question 6, like just asking that question about hobbies. And if there's been a reduction in interest in their hobbies, helps us with half of the questionnaire to come.
Yeah, building up that initial relationship, getting to know them a bit more helps make this conversation more natural, and then also gives you some concrete ideas to reference when you're asking these specific items so that they can make more sense in the context of their life. I think that's a great point. Thank you. Others have thoughts around how they might phrase this item? And what about our second item, feeling down, depressed, or hopeless? How might you explain that to a member? Yeah, Josh.
Sorry, I don't want to monopolize, but I think, you know, especially with the populations in general that we're assisting or that we see in an urban context, a lot of these words don't make sense or they kind of fly over their heads, right? So if you ask somebody who doesn't have like formal higher education, you know, what is depression or what is a feeling of hopelessness, a lot of times they may not be able to identify with those words. So I think it's really important again to build that initial relationship, but ask like satellite questions, not just the ones that are present on the questionnaire, right? So if I were to ask somebody this question during intake, or if, you know, every 6 months we redo this in their career plans, I might ask them questions, you know, if anyone's taken like a mental health triage 101 training or class, questions that would indicate that they have symptoms of depression without actually saying the word depressed or depression, right? So a great example is, do you find yourself engaging in the same media, right? So the people who watch the same, a lot of people don't know this, but if you watch the same shows over and over, if you watch the same movies over and over, is because you have an emotional attachment to the fact that you know what the outcome of this is going to be. And that can be a huge indicator that you're depressed. So having those satellite questions and to the best of your abilities, creating a foundation or a connection before we start getting into these really heavy and difficult topics.
Because some of these items, which you all have mentioned, is, you know, it might feel a little unexpected sometimes to be asked this in this context. And Josh, I like the point that you made of like words like down, depressed, hopeless might be a bit abstract or like, you know, not come up in everyday conversation. And that got me thinking about, ways to phrase it where we're providing a more relatable definition. So, instead of saying how often have you been bothered by feeling hopeless, like when I say hopeless, meaning like feeling like things just aren't going to change, there's no way they're going to work out. Making it more a conversational way of describing that word as well. And a common word that we hear instead of depressed is feeling sad. So finding those shifts in language too. And then to your point, Josh, thinking of any relatable examples of what it might look like to feel down, depressed, hopeless, so that we're balancing that idea of not wanting to just give one example where it's like, well, if you don't fall into this category of watching shows over that you're familiar with, then you're not experiencing this, but also it does help contextualize what it could look like. And I think earlier we mentioned how down, depressed, hopeless doesn't always fully capture what depression can look like. It can also look like feeling overwhelmed or angry. And so keeping that in mind when we're asking these questions, if people are presenting in that way or describing those emotions, it's helpful for us to make note of. So I'm just going to check in with Marina real quick, since I know we don't have that much time left in our training, and I want to make sure that we cover some of the most important material. So I think, are you good with jumping into our breakout group for the next few minutes?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, absolutely. I think we can skip ahead to whatever you feel is important and try to end on time. And then if folks would like to stay for an additional 5 or so minutes, we can do a really brief meditation at the end, just so that's still offered. But I want to be really respectful of everyone's time and still offer folks the opportunity to leave at 4:15. So Letty, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll jump into some breakout groups and we'll continue this conversation around the items. But then in that smaller group setting, it'll allow you to, flag any items that you feel like you really want to focus on how to practice asking those. And we'll just do that for a few minutes and then we'll come back right before 4:15. So Sally, if we could get your support with heading into those breakout groups with myself in one and Marina in one, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. I'm just trying to assign books to.
Thank you. All right, we will see you all in one of our breakout groups.
Hi, everyone. Please join the breakout rooms if you're able to. Thank you. Hey everyone, I know some of y'all may be inactive right now, but if you can hear this, please join the breakout room that you've been assigned to. Thank you.
Hi, everyone who's just come back to the main room. To my group, sorry we got pulled out like that, but we'll go ahead and wrap up.
We were having the best conversation.
Yeah, and in our group, Cheryl had just asked a question that I think is a good one that we were discussing as well. So we can let you go first, and then we'll get back to discussing ours, and we'll let people go and have the meditation. How does that sound, Letty?
Sorry, but I have to go.
Of course.
Thank you. I appreciate everything I learned today.
Good.
And I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah,
Bye.
for coaching, those of you who are wellness coaches or wellness coordinators, I'm forgetting my language now. We're really glad that you're here. We want to be respectful of folks' time. So if you need to step out, please do. Letty, do you want to mention just a few things that you were discussing, or you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I can briefly just reiterate. We covered the importance of, it really being a conversation. And one of the things I didn't have a chance to mention, but speaks to some of the points that people were bringing up, was, coming in with curiosity about the person, of how you can best support them, and remembering that that's our main goal that we're keeping in mind. And then we got into some of the details about some specific items and clarifying, like in item 1, for example, it asks about little interest or pleasure, and clarifying, when we ask that, we're asking, do you have little interest or little pleasure, as opposed to little interest or conversely a lot of pleasure doing something. So just having some clarity around those items when we're asking them is really helpful to keep in mind, and also the importance of practice, so that once this feels more comfortable to you, you're better able to start dedicate time to having thoughts around, trauma-informed care and motivational interviewing as strategies to help make these conversations flow more smoothly.
Yeah, I want to just add to that you can say, do you feel less interest or pleasure than you did in the past, or little or much less interest or pleasure? Do you feel kind of flat, like you have less interest or pleasure? You can say this in a way that feels comfortable to you while still conveying the gist of the question. I think some people feel like they have to read the question like a robot, and you don't necessarily have to do that. You could read the question and then explain what it means. Or you could kind of explain what it means in the middle, whatever's easiest for you. We do want to make sure that this question gets asked, but it's okay for it to be, asked in a way that is understandable to the member, which I think it isn't in its current form. We got a great question as well about asking about folks' families and their mental health, because that's often, as Iris was mentioning, there's often a sort of contagious experience where if somebody has a caregiver, like a parent who is really struggling with mental illness, that it's very stressful for that person as well. And so that, that can also be a way of talking about these things. But in this moment, in the screening itself, we really want to get a sense of the member themselves. And we know that a lot of the things that go on for people are social, and like breakups or, other kinds of relationship type conflicts can really impact people's well-being. And that is something that we want to take into account later in the process. But we, in this screening part, are just really focused on what's going on with their emotions in that moment. So again, thanks so much for staying over. We are going to offer a really brief meditation for folks who are interested in staying for that. If you would instead like to leave, we really thank you for being here. We want to respect your time. So for those of you who are interested in joining us for the meditation, we're going to be doing a guided visualization practice. And so you can start by just recognizing for yourself where you feel you are on that stress thermometer right now, where 0 is totally calm and 10 is feeling the most upset. Without judging, just notice what kinds of feelings and sensations are present for you right now before we start this exercise. What number do you feel you are at right now? Just take a moment and take note, and take a deep breath in and let it go. And as we do this exercise together, you can close your eyes or take a soft gaze at your hands in your lap. Just notice what's present for you here as you do this. And take a deep breath in and let it go. If your mind happens to wander during this exercise, just gently bring it back to the sound of my voice and to noticing your breathing. And take a deep breath in and let it go. Go ahead and take a moment to get settled here where you're seated, noticing
Breathing exercise.
Noticing your attention to any sensations and feelings that may be arising in your body and any emotions you may have. Let's continue to check in and take a deep breath in and let it go. And take another deep breath in and let it go. And as you continue to breathe slowly and deeply, imagine a warm golden light above you, casting a sunshine down onto you. Each time you breathe out, imagine it sliding down over you to cover your whole body, a relaxing glow of all of the light, and beginning to fill your body up. First, your feet filling with this golden light. Imagine this warm light filling your feet and ankles, and notice them relaxing as they begin to gently glow. And as you continue to breathe slowly and deeply, watch the golden light rise to fill your calves and your knees, continuing to breathe slowly and deeply as the light rises with each out-breath, relaxing more and more as it washes over your legs. And just continuing to breathe slowly and deeply as your thighs and seat fill with this golden light, this warmth, this expansive spaciousness and relaxation. Watching how each out-breath brings the level of light a little higher over your lower belly, and continuing to breathe slowly and deeply. Bringing your attention to your breath in and out, and then to the level of the light, which is now rising through your lower chest, up to your shoulders, beginning to flow warmth and relaxation down your arms to your hands, where it pools and begins to fill your fingers, then fills your hands. Noticing what it feels like to allow them to fill with golden light. Allowing yourself to breathe slowly and deeply in and out. And then bringing your attention to your arms and watching the golden light rising there, slowly filling your arms with warmth and relaxation. Allowing yourself to relax here as your body is filled with this beautiful light. And as you continue to breathe slowly and deeply, allowing the light that's washing over your face to begin to fill up and relax your neck, allowing any tension there to melt away in this beautiful golden light, just allowing the warmth and the space to take over, allowing yourself to be here, glowing and relaxed, as the golden light washing down your face begins to fill and relax the muscles of your face and head. Maybe you feel your tongue relax in your mouth, your jaw let go. And now allowing yourself to really see yourself, this glowing, holy being, filled with light, filled with warmth and spaciousness and care and relaxation. Feeling the beauty of this light, of yourself, of each of our beautiful selves as we come together here to support the people in our communities. And as this practice comes to an end, carry this warmth and spaciousness with you. You have just completed a skillful task, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes and return to this call where we sit together. Just noticing if you feel differently after this exercise. Thank you so much for being here and taking this extra 5 minutes of your day. We so appreciate all the work that you do with our members. And if anyone would like to share their feelings in the chat on the way out, we welcome that as well. Thank you so much. Sure, Allison, I'm happy to provide those scripts. We can certainly do that. We usually, again, we have a different model in mind for this, where we do actually teach that part. Yes, everyone deserves a nap. I'm glad you feel that way, Iris. We're happy to share those mindfulness meditations if you'd like them. So we'll do that. That's something that we did intend to share initially, but we're not offering the counseling training piece, where we'd be offering those as well. Thank you for being here, all of you.